Welcome to our Vendée Globe live here this Friday. It's a beautiful clear day in Les Sables d'Olonne. High pressure system here, very light winds and quite cold. On the race course, well, Alex Thompson is back opening miles. That's the good news for the fans of the Hugo Boss Black Boat. He's opened about 10 miles over recent hours ahead of Thomas Rion and Charlie Dallin. These who are well separated to Alex's east now. Guests today are Quentin Lucet, who's the designer of the or co-designer of the Hugo Boss boat with the VPLP and the project manager for the boat, and Will Harris, who is locked down in England, and he is of course with Team Malizia. But first up, let's look at the rankings for today at midday. Well, Alex Thompson's still leading as he's opened out about 10 miles roughly over the morning. He's now 15.6 miles ahead of Thomas Rion. Third is Charlie Dallin, who is 39 miles behind Thomas Rion. Jean Le Cam is now 37 miles behind Dallin and 206 miles off the lead. In fourth, Louis Burton. Well, Louis is up to fifth place at 243 miles behind the leader, but only 3 miles ahead of Kevin Escoffier. Escoffier is sixth. Seventh, Boris Herrmann, our German skipper on Sea Explorer Yacht Club de Monaco. He's in seventh. Yannick Bestaven is eighth on Maitre Coq fourth. And Sam Davis now in ninth. Sebastian Simon charging, really fastest boat in the fleet over the 24 hours into the morning. He is in 10th. Looking down the table, 13th, Giancarlo Padotti. He is 491 miles behind the lead. Our next international is Alan Rura from Switzerland in 18th. Pip Hare still going really nicely in 22nd place on Medallia. And then further down, Miranda Meron and Ari Husela still very close together, though Ari Husela has taken off a little bit and has moved clear. So that's the rankings just now. Let's recap then. Everybody's talking about why Hugo Boss lost a few miles. Let's look at our 3D animation and run things since before the equator. So the close-up today is on the top three, really. We're going back across the equator and in the doldrums. Quick rewind on Tuesday. Back on Tuesday at 12 noon, Alex was in the lead with 92 miles of lead ahead of Rion and Charlie Dallin, with a gap of 120 miles over Charlie. But already there were small gaps between the three IMOCAs as they came down into the doldrums. The three IMOCAs did really get through relatively unscathed and across the equator. Hugo Boss still had about 80 miles in hand on Thomas Rion. A small drop on Alex's speed over Wednesday evening between 3 p.m. and 3 a.m. 2 knots less then compared to his pursuers, and the courses differ over the coming hours. So Alex is clearly the one who goes out to the west and it continues to between 18 to 20 knots of boat speed for the IMOCAs roughly. But now we can see that today the lateral gap is very huge, or very large, about 140 miles just now. Alex very much in the west. Charlie Dallin slightly behind, is in more in a middle route, and linked out, Thomas Rion is furthest to the east. So that doesn't really reflect what the standings say this afternoon. About 15 miles between Alex and Thomas Rion, Charlie Dallin in the middle. We're going to join Quentin Lucet, our expert. Why has Alex been losing miles then?
Well, I think there might be like a different reason for that. I think one of them could be like probably, and I'm sure Will be more clever on this approach, is regarding the route and the strategy he wants to have for the following days. And I think, like if you want to go more on the west and on the east, this might pay a little later. So this is definitely one, like strategical approach, and which can pay a little later. There might be as well, I don't know if you had the chance, Andy, to look at the hub from Alex, and I think he was sleeping pretty well. So I suspect he didn't feel the need for maybe pushing too hard for now, and maybe was more like an controlling aspect from the followers. Mm-hmm. So this could be like as well one reason, and maybe as well in terms of designs, there might be some slight performance design according to the real wind they do have for now. But I'm not sure this is the case, but that could be as well one explanation. But for now, we didn't get any like a specific alarm saying that Alex has an issue or something. So it's just like more, you know, probably doesn't see the need for accelerating for now. Probably.
Indeed. The curved foils, do they make a difference in the beam reaching conditions versus the Vendée boats?
There is definitely some differences, but I'm not sure the guys have the same rhythm on board, and maybe, you know, I think this morning Alex was like speeding up a little compared to the past like hours or days, and but I think he has the potential to go as fast as the others or even faster probably. But maybe if it's not doing it, it's because it don't see the need for it.
I think that's probably right. Having spoken to Alex, we'll see his video in a short time. But tell us a little bit about the development of Hugo Boss. What was it that the team wanted in terms of the real sweet spots for this boat?
The very, you know, like the main thing was like for Alex, I think that was its 7th boat or something. So he was sailing on, so it was pretty clear on what were the good like approach, because he knows himself when he's sailing, and he knows what he needs. So I think all this cockpit, you know, like arrangement was definitely coming from him, from his inputs, and that was a key point in the whole global design of the boat, you know, for all the structural side of it and so on. And as well in terms of performances and design brief for the foils, I think he knows where he wants to go. So for him, for instance, the upwind sailing condition is not so much like a main thing. He's more like concerned about the VMG or reaching modes. And so he came with some ideas and inputs for the foil designs, and we've started from there and looked, you know, like into some options where we ended up with the C foils is having on board.
Tell us, you know, this cockpit. Give us some numbers. What does it generate in terms of advantage, having the center of gravity lower, for example?
So the center of gravity is more forward because, you know, like it's closer to the mast, all the winches and so on, which is a good thing as well for all the trim consideration and pitch pulling and so on. In terms of center of gravity of height, anyway, we do have like a limitation with the cockpit height, which is limited to one value compared to the design waterline. So anyway, we are at the minimum, but that was already the case, let's say, for the previous generation. So I think the main focus on this specific design was like to have everything accessible from this this cockpit, where it could like you know, literally like, you know, do anything from there. So I think that was the main focus, was to have like all the accesses for all the maneuvers from the cockpit, and which was definitely one focus for a single-ended like configuration.
Quentin, as usual, we have some questions from the internet. Leading on from the question about the cockpit, and we love our questions from the internet, where do you go next with your plans for the next boat relative to this cockpit configuration?
You know what? It's hard to have like a clear view of what will be the next generation anyway, because all the ideas are coming, you know, during the brainstorm session with the teams, and we do have like some inputs coming from the team. We are doing some proposals, and then from there, you know, like we built up like the final solution from there. But it's like definitely a teamwork from the, you know, working between the architects and the team itself. And And I think as well, one very important thing that is working with Alex cockpit configuration is regarding all the aero and windage considerations. That's very efficient because the boom is like sealing the gap between the top of the roof of the cockpit and the boom, and that's very much like an important like a feature for all the windage aspects. But yeah, in terms of evolution for the cockpit, I think definitely we considered this version from a performance aspect, and my personal feeling is for the next generation we would have to integrate maybe early on in the design process how the human will be living inside, because that's very much of importance, and it's definitely as well a performance factor to feel like to feel good in your living area.
I mean, that was my next question, of course. I mean, where does the living conditions, how can they improve, or can they? Is there any smart solutions for the living area?
I think for now it's mainly like the teams itself, which is working on this aspect. Once all the deck layout is like kind of sorted, I think in the process for now, that's the way it is. But probably for the next generation, we would integrate all those factors in the early stages, because it's so important. I mean, when you think about it, like to be like 65 days on board or 70, and you don't know how you will be sleeping or you will be have a little rest. I mean, that's so much like a performance factor for the future. I think we need to integrate more this into the design than what we are doing today.
Indeed. I'll come back to you now in 1 minute, but let's just see Alex this morning in his man cave. Alex, everybody's talking about this battle you're having with the two French guys just now. Just describe it from your perspective. Different configurations, different boats.
I'm trying to find a way to the Southern Ocean, but I'm not really being affected by what they're doing. They're not really affecting me right now.
The route down the South Atlantic, it looks quite interesting. Just describe it, please. And how are you? You've been getting a bit more sleep, a little bit more rested, or is it still very intense?
It's very clear what we have to do over the next couple of days. I'm positioned well, so I don't feel too much pressure.
What's your kind of regime just now in terms of sleeping and eating and trimming?
Well, really just try and sleep as much as I can. I'm definitely still in debt, so wherever I possibly can, whenever I feel the urge, I try and get my head down and get to sleep. And then eating's a constant process for me anyway. I'm constantly going to the cupboard and grabbing a snack or a meal.
And water, how much water are you drinking living inside there?
I'd imagine probably the same as other people are. In terms of the heat, I'd say it's cooler in here than it is outside. But I'm probably drinking 4 litres of electrolyte a day. So it was a struggle to stay hydrated, but over the last day or so, it's becoming better.
Okay, Alex, good to catch up with you, and hopefully let's see how things go down the South Atlantic.
Thanks, Andy. Take it easy.
So Alex Thompson there this morning. Quentin, what do you think of these living conditions? He seems to be profiting. He seems to be okay.
Yeah, it seems to be fine. Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I believe you have to live this really to understand. But it's true. It's a little odd to remain like in this closed area. And yeah, probably on the long term, it's a very good thing, probably.
I mean, sure, I think he's put a little bit of a brave face in it. It was interesting that if you go on Alex's or Hugo Boss Instagram page, there was a message from Anthony Joshua, the boxer, who was saying it's all about being comfortable in adversity, and Alex is certainly that. Quentin, tell me a little bit about Jeremy Bayou. There was a question from the internet, which I'm going to put to you. We know the answer. There was a suggestion that he had changed the foils when he came in.
When he came to Les Salles?
Yeah.
No, I think no, he didn't change the foils.
Well, obviously, just to be clear, you're not allowed to change the foils if you're still in the race. So just to clarify that one. And who's impressed you on the race course? We've been very, very impressed with Louis Burton.
Yeah, absolutely. He's doing a very good race, and he's having quite a tough rhythm, I must admit. I mean, it's like on the side with PRB, and he's doing very well with a generation of the boat from a 2016 who had like the upgrade of the big foils, and definitely this is that's very impressive.
Anyone else impressed you on the race course away from the VPLP designs, for example?
Well, anyway, I think I'm impressed by what they are doing, all of them, to be honest. That's a little crazy, this adventure, I must admit. But yeah, so no, I think, we in a way, we didn't know really what kind of speed they could reach with the foilers. And my perception today is like they remain pretty conservative because the race is still long, and they got like quite some miles to go through. But yeah, I think it's very much like I think it's very, very interesting to have a little bit of a feedback from the theoretical view we had at the beginning of the race. So,
indeed.
Quentin,
a pleasure to join you. I hope you'll join us over the course of the race and give us some of your expert insights. Thank you so much. So let's now have a look at the weather. I say the key really just now is getting down the South Atlantic into the Southern Ocean, as Alex Thompson was saying. And this is how it looks this Friday. So Friday's weather, the leaders really looking at the South Atlantic, looking for a route down into the roaring 40s. It's all about that just now. A little bit of a high-risk option for the leaders, but there is a little bit of an avenue. Look at the first chart. This is 9 o'clock this morning. We're seeing Charal up here, just off probably the latitude of Porto in the northeasterly Portuguese trades. He's probably got 15, 20 knots and going reasonably quickly. A little bit lighter just ahead of him. But and then it gets quite complicated. Then we can see Nurest Art et Fenetra. That's Fabrice Amadeo now coming into the back of the fleet, making his comeback, and it'll be so motivating for Fabrice. Down at this level here, we have One Planet, One Ocean. That is Didac Costa, just starting to contemplate the doldrums. The doldrums opening out very slightly now, more complicated, much more cloud around. And we spoke with Stéphane Le Deraison this morning, and he said he was finding it quite hard. And then looking further down towards the leaders of Jean Le Cam here, just a little bit further to the east, as has been his preference, and Alex Thompson furthest west on Hugo Boss. Now we've been constantly talking about this curve off the St Helena High as the breeze lifts them coming south, and Alex is on the outside of the curve, now into quite a lifted breeze and a relatively light breeze. I think he said about 15 knots when we spoke with him this morning. But it's really now all about getting down from there, as we can just see, hopefully. Just very briefly, just to give you a picture of the cloud patterns just now in the doldrums just here. As I said, Stéphane Le Deraison, he's been through this cloud pattern with the doldrums. And then you can see very hardly any cloud at all around the high pressure. And this is how we're coming down this part of the course at the moment. Meantime, up here, a little bit more cloud. And then looking at the chart here. So this is the chart for the routing around the St Helena high pressure down here. This little low pressure is the target for the three front boats coming down this cold front in lifted conditions, 15, 20 knots probably coming down here. So it should be reasonably quick. But then we come down to this pinch point here, the transition between the low and the high, and it gets really quite messy. The danger being if you can't get through here, the high will reform into one big high, and the guys could get stuck. So that's the So an interesting picture then, looking at the South Atlantic, a little bit of a high-risk option perhaps. Will Harris, you're one of our resident weather experts. What's your thoughts on the South Atlantic as it looks just now?
Yeah, so this part of the course is always quite complicated. You can see Alex just approaching that cold front, and there's that small low pressure forming, which, if you manage to hook into that, you can effectively call it a train down to the Cape of Good Hope. So if the leaders manage to get into that, and the door kind of gets shut behind for the boats behind, fourth, fifth, sixth behind, really they could take hundreds of miles in a matter of days. So it kind of looks like they're heading for that at the moment to try and get into this low pressure, but it's not too typical. You see, like you say, it kind of dies off in the next 4 or 5 days, so it doesn't take them all the way there. So it's going to be quite a big decision as to what do you do at that point. Do you carry on sailing the shortest course to Cape of Good Hope, or do you dive down south and into the roaring 40s and get south of the high pressure? But that'll probably involve sailing through light winds. So we could see a bit of a sort of a opening up between the top 10 boats. Maybe those front few will go for the shorter route, and the one slightly further behind might consider to take a more westerly option and go round the high pressure, and not try and hook into this low pressure. So complicated.
Complicated. What would you do if you're Alex at the moment then?
I think Alex is far enough, is close enough to that low pressure to be able to hook into it and sail that more direct route, and with pretty nice downwind conditions. I think he doesn't really have so much of an option to go west compared to the others, but who knows? He might go the other way. It kind of depends how he feels his boat performs in different conditions. Each skipper knows their boat so well, and there's definitely such big differences amongst the fleet, and that will really have such a big play in their strategy. What they feel their boat is fastest at and what it feels best at. But with this low pressure, they'll have good downwind conditions and relatively flat water, because it's roughly kind of where new lows are forming. So there's not much time for the sea state to develop. And
it was quite fun that he was giving nothing away this morning.
Yeah. He's really really secretive, and that's quite a good way to be. I think it's he's so focused on this race and winning it, and you can really see that in the way that he talks about it, not letting anything up. But at this point we can start to get some rough ideas of what he might be doing, but certainly in the next 4 hours, in the next 24 hours, we'll have a much clearer picture of what strategy he's opting for.
Meantime, Will, I've got a question from Lionel on the internet. He's asking about, is there anything that the skippers can do to avoid collisions with UFOs, with floating objects?
Yeah, so this year, relatively new to the fleet. At the start of the TJV last year, we started integrating a system called OSCAR. It's on about it's roughly 20 boats of the 30 in the fleet. And OSCAR is effectively an infrared image camera and visible camera that looks forward in front of the boat, and uses artificial intelligence to detect any sort of objects you wouldn't expect to see in front of you, things in the water, other boats, could be anything like that. So that's something we've been working on, and many other teams in the fleet have been working on this year.
And I believe that Boris has it integrated with his pilot system. Is that unique to Malizia, or is that common in the fleet now?
I'm not too sure about the other teams at the moment, but certainly this year, once it was authorized in the rules, we've been integrating it into our autopilot, because you imagine the situation where the skipper's in the bunk, and to actually go and with the OSCAR, it will detect an object up to 600 meters in front, and it will to actually see what's in order to get on deck and actually see what's going on after the alarm goes off. It could take 15-20 seconds. By that point, the boat's traveled 50, 100 meters, and you've already hit the object. So the idea behind this system is, because the OSCAR is so reliable now and so good at detecting objects, when the alarm goes off for more than 3 seconds, it will automatically steer the boat. It will either bear it away or effectively try and slow the boat down to avoid hitting the object. And in future years, hopefully this will develop more. So OSCAR will actually tell us, okay, the object's here, it's moving at this speed, I need to steer in this direction to actually avoid it. But so far so good, I believe, on board. Boris says the system's working great on board, and we did some testings before the start of the race by having a rib motor very fast in front of the boat, and the system works very well. So yeah, it's really nice to have that backup, especially for the skipper when they're in the bunk and downstairs and doing 20, 25 knots, just to have that bit more reassurance that there's nothing in front of them is really, really helpful.
And the other thing, we spoke with Boris earlier, he's saying he still uses radar, which some boats just use AIS.
Yes, for us, we're looking, it would be such a bad thing in the race if Boris was to hit something, especially when going very fast. So we're using every means possible to try and avoid hitting objects in the water. You can't rely on every boat having AIS on board them, and also not everything in the water has AIS on it. It could be objects, containers, who knows what's in the water, and so radar is really, Boris is really in the routine of using the radar at all times and keeping it on to really try and minimize the risk of hitting something in the water. We also have a whale pinger on the keel, so it's a small echo sounder effectively, which sends out a high-pitched frequency sound, which in theory will deter whales or tell them that there's the boat moving towards them, tell them that the boat's there, and we're really trying to avoid collisions with marine mammals as well.
Thanks, Will. Tell us a little bit about Boris's race just now. Then, how do you feel like we're going?
I mean, he's doing great at the moment. We're really happy how the boat's been. I think he is too. We've not had any major breakages, if any at all. So Boris has managed to really just focus on the race and focus on what's going on around him. I think the big test is coming up in the next couple of weeks when they get into the Southern Ocean. And we were talking with Quentin earlier about boat designs, and I think in the next couple of weeks this will really be the answer as to how these new foiling boats will perform in the Southern Ocean in these much tougher conditions. And we can see how these developments over the last 4 years since the last race have kind of changed. But Boris so far is very happy, and we'll see what strategy he chooses to take in the next few days. It's going to be an interesting part of the race because he's in 7th now at the moment, a few hundred miles from the leader. But if you make the right strategy and the other boats take the wrong one, then it could be all to play for the lead still.
Could be, and he's a sailor who'll be comfortable, I think, in the south.
Exactly. I think he was saying the other day as he went through doldrums, this is the 11th time he's been across the equator. So, and I think it will be the 3rd or 4th time he's been around the world. So, he's a very experienced sailor. He's very used to these conditions, and I think as a result of that, he's very adapted to dealing with the long distance of this race and the tough conditions of it. So I really feel like he's got into his rhythm now, into his routine, trying to get as much rest as possible and really kind of being at one with the boat over the next few months. So no, it's really good.
Good, thank you so much, Will. We'll join you again during the course of the race for your expert analysis. So that's all we have time for today with Vendée Globe Live in English. Join us tomorrow at the same time, 12:30 UTC, 13:30 in France. And if you have any questions, keep posting them to our internet channels, to Instagram, to Twitter and to Facebook. Join us tomorrow.